Hello, this is Sconza, and I'm here to talk about the Phantasy Star Online 2 raid boss called Dark Falz Luther. Unlike the raid boss before him, Dark Falz Elder, Luther is significantly more complex. So much so that there seems to be some confusion within the North American community on how to best go about fighting him. So, as somebody with 6.5 years of experience in the Japanese version of the game, I thought I might be able to help shed some light on how the fight works. First, I'll be going over the super hard version of the fight, which is currently what we have in the North American version of the game. However, once they do release the next difficulty, which in Japanese is called Extra Hard, the fight will change drastically, and I'll explain how to deal with that after I explain the super hard version. So going into this fight, you're going to need at least one person, preferably more, who are able to inflict blind. This is because of the golden disc in his center, which I'll call a clock. Normally when you try and hit this clock, you'll do severely reduced damage compared to hitting any other part of his body. However, if Luther gets inflicted with the blind element, his clock will open up, revealing a red core, which becomes a weak spot. His clock will, however, close back up a few seconds after it opens. However, if you're able to do enough damage to the opened core, the clock will break, which will permanently open up the core as a weak spot. Okay, so getting into the fight. So the first thing that he always does is a downward slice directly at the spawn point. So what you're going to want to do is get out of the way immediately. After his opening attack, he's going to be immobile for quite a few seconds, and this is your opportunity to go and attempt to inflict blind on the clock. Once the clock opens up, he'll be stunned for a little bit, and this is when you need to rush the open core, do as much damage as you can. If he closes his clock back up again before you're able to break it, you don't need to worry, you can open it once again through blinding it. However, his resistance to blind increases every time his clock is opened. After about the third open, it's very rarely worth it to continue attempting to open it back up. If this does happen and you fail to open up the clock, don't worry, you can still do the strategies that I'll lay out in the extra hard portion of this video, and it'll work just fine. If you did manage to open up the clock, however, then congratulations, now all you need to do is beat on it until he's dead and avoid dying yourself. And now for Luther's attacks. In his starting phase, he'll have 3 of them. A vertical downward slice that he always opens with, some dark balls that he shoots out of his beak, which will home in on players he has aggro against, and then some spikes that he'll summon that'll hang in the air for a second before locking in on some specific players, which will then come down on the position that those players were standing at. All 3 of these attacks can be avoided basically just by constantly moving, never staying in the same place for too long. After you do enough damage to Luther, he will teleport far off stage and the entire area will turn red. He will then teleport back to the stage and begin his next phase, the fast phase. In this phase, he has a few more attacks that he could choose to do, such as a double inward slice, which will attack everybody that's not directly in front of him. The next attack he can do is one where he flies far above the stage and stabs down at a bunch of different players that he has aggro against. Each stab does several hits, and before they connect, they have a symbol on the ground that you can see, so you know where he's going to come down at. You can generally best avoid this attack by just constantly moving. Just make sure not to move onto a symbol where he's about to stab down at. However, if you're using a weapon that can get you high up in the air very easily, such as twin daggers, jet boots, or twin machine guns, you can actually get very high up to where he is, and while he's doing the stabs, he cannot hit you. Next attack is one where he'll just teleport and then do a low slice across the stage. The best way to avoid it is either to jump or just block it. It's fairly easily telegraphed. And the last attack they can do in this phase is a very quick slam with both of his swords down into the middle of the arena. This attack hits not only where the swords land, but also the area between them. Everywhere outside of the swords is safe, however. After you do enough damage to him, he'll teleport back out far outside the arena. This time, he'll throw out 4 swords that cover each area of the arena. After he throws out these swords, he will attempt to stop time, which will freeze your character if you get caught in it. However, if you're in iframes, the moment that he attempts to stop time, you'll be able to freely move. If you do get caught by the time stop, however, you're able to wiggle your stick or mash your directional keys on a keyboard in order to break out of it like you would a stun. Once you're able to move, the first thing you need to do is find the closest sword to you and start doing damage to it. Once the swords take a relatively small amount of damage, they will break, freeing up a quarter of the arena. After a certain period of time, the remaining swords will all come down onto the arena, dealing a very long and very powerful damage over time effect. After this, he'll come back to the arena and enter his slow phase, where the entire area turns blue. Most all of his attacks in this phase are similar to the ones in the fast phase, however they are significantly slower, but also significantly more powerful. For example, his stab now just has one singular hit. However, it is much more powerful, and has a shockwave that ripples out from it that does significant damage and will freeze you if you get caught by it. His double slam attack is also very similar in that it also now just has a large shockwave effect. However, in this phase, if you are directly in front of him as he slams down the two swords, you will not be hit by either the slam or the shockwaves. He also, once again, has the attack where he's able to spit balls that he had in the normal phase. However, now, the balls are much slower but have significantly better tracking and will do quite a bit more damage to you. One of his more dangerous attacks in this phase is his inward slice, because now when he does it, it generates 4 puddles of dark energy that will track players, and if you're standing in it, it will do a lot of damage to you very quickly. This can be a problem when everybody's all bunched up and all 4 of them just come onto the same spot, and so they'll start overlapping and doing a lot of damage very, very quickly. I would suggest, if possible, to jump up and attack in the air while these are out. Now for his new attack in this phase. He'll move to the center of the arena and put down both swords on opposite sides of him. He'll then start spinning very slowly. You can just run and keep pace with it. If you touch either one of the swords, though, it will do massive damage and very likely kill you. He also sets up some landmines along the track, so you'll need to watch out for that, jump over them, or just dodge them. There's not that many of them. As an interesting aside, if you're very high up at about his head level, he will not hit you with this attack. However, if you're even slightly lower, well above where the swords are, and there's no effect or anything, it will still hit you and almost certainly kill you. After he does his time stops, he'll now also have some extra bits in his normal and fast phases, which he can freely switch between. In his normal phase, he'll now have an extra horizontal slash when he does his downward slash, and both of those will generate little lightning bolts that if you're hit by them, you get stunned. Also, when he's in his normal phase, he can sink down into the platform so that his clock is below the platform, unreachable to you. However, his beak and head will be much closer to the ground and much more reachable for melee fighters. When he does this, I would suggest breaking his beak, which will knock him down, exposing his core on his neck. And after he gets back up, he will almost certainly go into a different phase where his clock is once again vulnerable. In his fast phase, he gains elemental effects for each of his attacks, such as the floor becoming fire on his inward slash, him gaining lightning on some of his slashes, and his downward stabs freezing you if you get hit by them. And once again, once you do enough damage to him, he will once again teleport out, send out his swords, and stop time again. However, this time, you have significantly less time before he brings the swords down on you, so you're going to want to be quick. After he comes back from that, though, there's nothing new. He'll just keep shifting between his phases, and you just gotta keep hitting the clock until he's down. And once he's down, congratulations, you've just beat Dark Falz Luther on Super Hard. And now for Extra Hard Luther, or whatever they choose to call the difficulty in the North American version. So the biggest difference between Extra Hard Luther and Super Hard Luther is the fact that if you try to open up his clock right away in Extra Hard, his clock will have a clouded shield around it, which will negate all damage done to it until you break his shoulders. In order to break his shoulders, however, you're going to need to break his arms first, so that's what you're going to want to first target when you start fighting him. The first thing to note is that he has a new opening attack. After his downward slash, he'll do a horizontal slash and then 3 stabs into the middle of the arena. After he finishes his stabs, you're going to want to rush the arm that's stuck into the ground. Once you do enough damage to the arm, the gauntlet on his arm will break, and he'll open up his shoulder to try and regenerate the gauntlet. Once he does this, you're going to want to focus on the open shoulder. Once you do enough damage to that, he'll fall over and expose his neck core. However, you do not want to hit the neck core right now. You just want to get into position for the next arm when it comes up. Once the next arm does come up, you just break it again, break the shoulder, and then it'll go down again. This time you do want to do as much damage as you can to his neck core. If everything goes well, this should push him into his fast phase. At this point, you just want to blind and rush the clock just as you did previously. Once you break it open, the fight will proceed just as it did in Super Hard up until the second time stop. At this point, he'll throw out 2 sets of swords instead of 1. One set will cover the corners of the arena, and one set will cover the direct north, south, east, and west of the arena. So you're going to need to break 2 swords in order to have a safe spot. After you get through that time stop though, there's nothing else new with Extra Hard Loser. I also should mention, this isn't necessarily very relevant to most fights with him, but if the fight with Luther is going to be especially drawn out, what you can do is, after his first time stop, he'll have these colorful crystals around his headdress, and breaking the 4 of those that are in the front will eliminate the elemental effects from his attacks, and once all 4 of his crystals are broken, the cloud around his neck core will disappear, allowing people that can shoot it, use techs on it, or reach it with melee to be able to damage it. This can especially come in handy if your group was not able to open up the clock in either Super Hard or Extra Hard. This will allow you to have some sort of weak point that you can hit. And that's all the information I have about Dark Falz Luther. If you found this video useful, maybe share it around to people that might need it, or don't, or whatever works for you. Bye.